All right, so we're recording. Byron, I don't think we've seen each other since the Dartmouth event, what, 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago?
Right, right. That was ABC's 50th, unofficial 50th anniversary
And
up at Dartmouth. Yeah.
and we really never talked that much prior. And it's just interesting how the rivers of change and the rivers of life kind of intersect. And I wanted to kind of chat with you because we both had some experiences up in Wallingford. You were there for 3 years?
I was there for 69 to 72.
And I kind of touched base from 67 to 66 to 69. I graduated in 67. And that, just even saying those words, I mean, that's like a few decades ago for both of us.
Yes. Well, you were at Choate when my brother was at Avon Old Farms.
See, I didn't know. So and was he an ABC student? You referenced
he was an ABC student as well. Yeah.
And again, with both of us being ABC affiliates, it's really fascinating when people ask me how I got to Wallingford, and I always kind of start with this program called the ABC, and it just amazes me. Even now, you and I were certainly a part of that affirmative action era, just still going on somewhat today. And it was an experiment then, and an experiment, I suppose, in some ways now. And that's why I'm so glad to kind of chat with you and to kind of share with the other Choate alums of color what our journey has been like in some degree. I'm not sure how fully transparent you're going to be. I'm not going to be totally transparent. I can't put out all of my skeletons out there, but I think folks will enjoy kind of hearing what's been on our mind these days and in the past. But let's start. You mentioned you're semi-retired now.
I am. I'm more or less retired.
More or less retired. But the is what's going on upstairs though.
So since COVID happened, we are pretty much full-time grandparents, 4 days a week, 12 hours a day, with a 7-year-old who is the daughter of my wife's son, who they just live down the street a few blocks. And so she gets dropped off in the morning, and we do school because I'm in Lansing, Michigan, and the Lansing public schools are all now virtual during the pandemic.
We're virtual for 10 weeks here at the moment.
So we're virtual until January. Then I guess they're going to reassess over Christmas break.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Connecticut, you're doing better than Michigan.
Well, yeah, but that is true. We're a small state, and we've got that New York City scare, so that kind of got everybody's attention. It really captured our attention quick. But before we go there, so, and this is your step grandson that you mentioned. This your first.
Yeah, this is my stepson's daughter.
Okay.
So my wife is from Montreal. They're Canadians, and so he's here. My wife is an American citizen now. She took her citizenship so she could vote, and he's still on his green card and working every day. His wife is working every day, and so we take care of Zoe, who's 7. At the same time, we have our own business too, which is a project management training business. So that business was pretty much shut down by the pandemic.
Oh, wait a minute, now you're confusing me. You're on one hand you're retired, and next semi-retired. Now you have your own business. I mean, what's going on?
Well, my wife has always had a business.
Okay.
And so now I'm just I'm the partner in the business.
All right, you get the cost.
We actually. We do stuff together. Like when she'll go and train, and she'll get the business. She'll do the training, say in Mexico. We've been to Mexico. We've been to California. We've gone to various places to do trainings for companies. And I go along for support. I add some things because I'm the psychologist in the room. So if someone needs something about people and personalities and stuff like that, she turns to me, and we do that sort of stuff. So it's a shared thing.
Would you say, thanks for sharing that kind of personal thing, would you say that some of your career and your work has it been psychology related or counseling related, or has that been a field of expertise for you?
Yeah, so all my degrees, I've got the degree from Wesleyan and from the University of Michigan and from Western Michigan University, and they're all in psychology, general psychology, counseling psychology. But what I did, and I actually was a licensed psychologist for a while, but I let that go because basically what I did was training, so and administration. So what I retired from the state of Michigan was running a state agency.
Okay.
I ran the Disability Determination Service, which does Social Security claims.
Right.
Then when I retired from there, I went to Social Security, and I worked for Social Security and ended up being in management there.
And so take me back to some of your psychology experiences, because before we went live, I kind of mentioned to you that the mental stress, I'm perfectly willing to share for the total universe that this mental stress has really been wearing on me like crazy. I'm not sure what, and when I say like crazy, I'm not ready to kill anybody. Well, I wouldn't say that, because there are some people that I would like to be under my line of fire.
Yeah, well, I can relate.
I won't mention any names.
We won't name anybody.
I won't mention any names, but the awareness of the range of my emotions during the day has really just taken an uptick, and just trying to be aware of what kind of irritates me, doesn't irritate me, the grump. And I used to think I could use the grumpy old man archetype kind of thing. I thought I could do it as a facade, but I'm not sure even that defines totally how grumpy. Sometimes I might have been grumpy back in the ABC days. So what's been your feeling about how you look at society over the last 20 or 30 or 40 years from a psychological standpoint? Because I noticed some of your recent Facebook posts really kind of talk about, in my mind, in general, the tensions of society and where truth is, and how people are perceiving and reacting to stability and sanity and loving or not loving. So I just wonder what your take was as we kind of talk in a way to some of our younger Choate Rosemary Hall alums, about how you see the state of the world.
Well, yeah, Tom, we live in a very crazy time. I mean, crazy is a broad word, but we live in a time where we have lots of information, and a big chunk of it is disinformation or malinformation. And it's it's like, if I were on Facebook and wanted to just disturb a lot of people, I could just start throwing threatening sort of stuff out there. Well, people do that. I mean, I can't sit down and watch Fox News without just going into a pseudo rage about how they're just lying to people. Indeed. And people are sitting back just saying, yeah, that's the truth, and it's a lie. And so, I mean, we're talking, we were kind of talking about how things, chatting on Facebook about racism and how it works and everything. And it's like, this is how racism works. And this is how any type of institutional attempt to disorient people and control people works. You get it on the news media. And so, there's some days I just go like, no, I'm not watching the news today, because I know that I will get pissed off and I'll get angry, and it won't be good for me.
So let's stay on that point for a second, because my mind goes to, given your training in terms of the psychology of the mind and the examination of the mind and psychology, psychiatry, counseling, prior to, if we had talked, say, like in the 80s or 90s, would you had the same feeling about the impact of racism, or is it kind of just a more of a global awareness of how it kind of infiltrates our whole body, mind, spirit, 24/7, 365?
Well, for me, and I don't know. I'm trying. Maybe it's not. Well, I'll just say, I don't think it's changed for me, and that's the whole thing. It's just that it's intensified in what I see now.
Uh-huh.
Because before, I always knew that there was this stuff going on. I had to deal with people personally,
Right.
you know, and, you know, I worked myself up through an institution, a government institution, from the bottom to the top, dealing with all kinds of racism. And
Indeed.
so it's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I mean, people were willing. I live on the same street as the governor of Michigan.
Okay.
Okay.
What,
And to have people drive down my street, honking their horns, playing music real loud, shaking their guns in the air, that they're going to go down and yell at the governor. I mean, no one would have done that in the 80s.
indeed.
They would have expected the Black Panthers to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's people waving American flags and Trump signs.
And as Governor Governor Whitmer.
Yes.
Indeed, and she was a potential VP candidate, and certainly she's been on the news here, at least in the East Coast, about her opposition to some of 145th's activities.
Yeah, and the Republicans control the both houses in the government here,
mm-hmm.
and they are trying to throw her out,
Right.
based on how she's been handling COVID.
Let's stick on this kind of memory lane, and again, you're the.
But let me tell you something really interesting, though.
Okay.
Is that, and it won't take long, but so she is using an emergency law to do executive orders in Michigan to help protect people from a virus, from COVID.
Yes.
That same law that she's using is the law that was used in the 1940s to put down union workers and to prevent and to control Black folks from protesting in the streets. And so she's flipped it on its head and is using it to protect people, and they're going after her for it.
And that's a real point. And I want you even to elaborate on that a little more, because the issue of rights of assembly and freedom of speech and freedom of expression and your public right to kill yourself if you so choose.
Right.
Is certainly using, both sides are using that argument here in Connecticut. Our governor has just announced it's a $100 fine if you try to go into an establishment without your mask.
Yeah, without mask. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your mask. But again, you saw the thing, and there was something I think in the recent district court decision. I think it was in Pennsylvania, trying to reverse this issue. So you live there.
So one of the things that makes me mad, and that gets me, raises my blood pressure, is that so she's taken a law that was designed to oppress people,
yes.
Oppress labor and minorities, and she's saying, well, I can use that law to try to protect people, and then they go after her,
sure.
And they say we're being oppressed, and
so the irony and folks still using every way that they can to stay in power, still you're very observant of that.
Yeah.
We're focusing pretty much on the Choate Rosemary alumni of color audience, although I'm really comfortable that even someone that will listen to this that has never touched foot in Wallingford, even know where Wallingford is, would still find this conversation of interest, because I want to kind of drill down a little further on your, you referenced Wesleyan, you referenced University of Michigan, you mentioned for your graduate school?
Yeah, I went there for graduate school, yeah. And
then Western Michigan, so entering a prep school environment when you were 14, 15?
Yep, 14.
14 or
just
so.
Just about to turn 15, yep.
And so being in that, the threat of assimilation, the threat of integration, the allure of compatibility or of pacification, that's been something you've been aware of for a long time. For me personally, I must tell you, I shouldn't say I must tell you, I was in a meeting 7 months ago, maybe 30 people, 25 white ladies, 3 or 4 Black people, and anxiety about Choate gets washed over me. Memories of that experience just It was a true panic attack. A true panic attack. So 55, 60 years later, I get this panic attack that I remember being to be stimulated by the Choate experience. And I wasn't as cognizant of what was stimulating the attack, other than just the emotions that I felt that I had been been repressing my emotions for so long.
But don't you think to be Black folks who have been forced into, you know, a society where you're ignored usually, that's going to happen. That's like every meeting that I've gone to, where, you know, even meetings that I've been in charge of.
Yes.
You know.
Well, and that's where this conversation, and I feel I'm comfortable in being as specific as I can with our specific audience, is because the anxiety attack, the symbolism of it, and the messaging it was sending me was that I've just been successful in repressing the rage and the anger. Mm-hmm. So it's like the volcano that I was unaware of, and then it just began to erupt. So it's not that I was unaware of the challenges of becoming captain of the basketball team, et cetera, and, you know, going to divinity school, going to Bucknell, and working in the media, but it was just the thought that I had been just sitting on all this, and my success of repression was I had lost that elastic band had broken. You know, that cover had just been cracked. So so I agree with you that I probably have had cognitive experiences of navigating through life for several decades, but just I clearly have not been able to forget about the experience. You know, again, it was 7 or so months ago, but it has kind of put me on alert in terms of my interactions with people in general, and my interactions with white people since that time.
Yeah, and we are going through a time right now where all that stuff is coming up. You know, it's coming up from you know, anything that you've repressed in the past can't come up right now because everything's in your face. And that's what I'm experiencing now, I think, and a lot of folks are experiencing now, is that things are feeling urgent. Mm-hmm. Whereas, say, in the 90s, things were not so urgent. Stuff was still there, but, you know, there was support for fight. There was the support for the fight that was going on. And right now, it's like you look around and the people around you support, but nobody near the top is supporting you. And, you know, I mean, I had to unfriend and block one of my Facebook friends who is in my class at Wesleyan, because she could not stop trolling me.
And what was her motivation? What was her negative motivation to continue to harass, in your opinion?
I think that she's tied very closely to the people who are doing really well in the stock market and who are really doing well in the financial markets, and she feels threatened by anybody who speaks out. And so she was throwing a lot of the right-wing rhetoric back and questioning everything I'm saying and saying, well, be real, Byron, this is not, you're just making this up. Document what you're talking about, mm-hmm. That sort of thing. Where I turned it on, I was turning it on her and saying, you need to document, you mm-hmm. need to explain yourself, and so at some point you just have to say,
But let's stay on that point in terms of, let's assume that you and I, for better or for worse, hopefully it's more better than worse, are kind of the elder states people in the Choate alumni pantheon. And for some of the younger people that are in the third form or fourth form or fifth form right now, you follow me? That
mm-hmm.
might be encountering. So the lady that you're referencing, were you guys close at Wesleyan?
No.
Were you considered friends? Okay.
No. not at all.
Why do you think she targeted? Why did she target you?
Well, for many years, I think from the 1980s, the late 80s, I think it was 88 to a few years ago to 2016, I was the class secretary.
Okay.
So everybody kind of knew me vicariously or virtually,
Indeed.
you know, and I would see them at reunions because I've only missed one reunion. So I've been back to Connecticut every 5 years. And so I get to meet these people now, even though they were not my friends at all.
Right.
At Wesleyan. And so they feel familiar with me.
Indeed. See, let's stay on that point. So you made the investment to stay involved with a predominantly white institution, and particularly from the alumni standpoint, where every year you're supposed to submit articles and pictures and help fundraise, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about that commitment.
Well, so my commitment was twofold. One, I liked Wesleyan. You know, I went there. I was attracted there because the recruiter came to Choate. He was a black guy, Randy, and he impressed me. I was impressed that Wesleyan students were willing to come down to Choate and visit me at WWEB, which I was the general manager of.
Oh, okay, all right.
At the radio station.
See?
And check me out. And I said, these people are cool, and so they were on my list with Boston College and University of Michigan, and Wesleyan didn't give me the best package, but I went there. And when I got there, I met incredible people in my class, black and white, and otherwise.
Give a little shout out. We mentioned Jay and then Paul. You can give a little
Jay
shout
Hogarth, Paul Carty, who was at Choate and went to Wesleyan too, and just incredible people. Ted Shaw was there, who went on to be the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Education Fund head, and so I met great people there. And so when I left, I said, this is a good, I want to stay in touch. Okay, that's the first reason.
Yes.
The second reason is that my class, there's a cohort of people who went through Wesleyan who were black and Latino. And during 75, 76, we pretty much took over the student activity of the school. I ran the radio station. There's a guy named Lacey Johnson who was at the newspaper at the Argus. There are two friends who were on the judiciary, the student government, who were running the student government. We were all black. And we were running the student life at Wesleyan University. So my idea as class secretary when I came in 5 years after I graduated, or 10 years after I graduated, was I'm going to keep that going. I'm going to keep throwing the names out of Bob Thompson and Jimmy Haddon and people who would who were and keep our folks connected and involved in the school. And to a certain extent, I did that.
Indeed. And again, the time frames again was from, you mentioned was 10 years how long were you head of your class, your class agent, as they say?
My class secretary, I was class secretary from 86 or so, right around 86 to 2014. Cut it out.
I mean, that's a commitment, man.
It's a commitment, but it's not a bad commitment. And not only, you get to know everybody. You get to know people and where they're coming from, and you know who are, the good, the bad, the ugly. You know everybody in your class.
Let's kind of connect your multicultural, that word probably didn't even exist when you were, but your multicultural, and also I would say multidimensional experiences with people over the last 20, 30, 40 years in terms of where we are now with the division in society? What do you see? Do you see more allies on our side? Do you see just people on the sidelines because they're discontented and not motivated? Because I haven't gone to return to Bucknell yet for a reunion, to give you an expression. And I didn't return to Choate until, although I've lived in New Haven since 1971, Wallingford's just 15 minutes away. I didn't step foot on the campus from 67 until maybe I was asked to join the board to become a trustee in 1995. So to hear.
Well, that's a good thing, though.
so to hear your connection, so you can understand why I'm I'm intrigued with some of your thoughts.
Well, see, my experience at Choate it was okay, but it wasn't great. And so, have I been back to Choate? Yes, I've been back to Choate because I have a son who went to Choate and graduated in 2000.
Oh, cut it out. See, so there's another connection.
So yeah, I mean, Stephen Haskins, okay, graduated in 2000, and he was the first Black alumni son to graduate from Choate.
See.
And the only reason why I sent him there, or the biggest reason I sent him there, is because Tim Bradley was there. Recruiting. And Tim called me up and he said, "So what are your kids doing?"
Indeed.
And he wanted to recruit my daughter, Anna, but she was already going to be a junior in high school, and she was already elected as the mayor of the school, as her class president. And so it was like, no, we're not going to break that up. She's successful where she's at. But Stephen was younger, a couple of years younger, and so he was a prime age, and he did really well. I mean, he's a doctor. He went to Yale. He went to your school. He's a fellow Yale alum.
He leads blue, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to go to Anna shortly before we conclude. That's really fascinating. We're going to you mentioned Paul Carty. I'm going to have a conversation with Paul for this same kind of format, and certainly with Tim, we're going to have the same kind of format. Initially, I was thinking of the three of you, but then I thought, let me kind of divide it so we can just focus one-on-one kind of thing. Because Tim can, I don't mind saying this to the world, he can go a while. If I ask him a question, it might be 20 minutes before we can get a word in edgewise. I'm just saying, you're supposed to smile at that, but
yeah, these teachers,
25 minutes before and with Paul being a lawyer, that's like 30 minutes. So yeah, I thought I better try to do one-on-one.
Well, I'm a psychologist, so I spend a lot of time going,
See, well, yeah, that helps. That's I'm going to kind of give you a chance to, maybe you might have some questions that you want to throw at me. But let's take, if we can stick on this psychology theme, because it disturbs me in so many ways in terms of people not complying with social distancing, not complying with the mask, the self-destructive behavior that I just kind of perceive it as a kind of backdrop. 3 or 4 of my clients are involved with public health initiatives, prostate cancer, be it breast cancer, now with the COVID situation, clinical trials. So a lot of my marketing efforts are pertaining to clients that are trying to really just to remind people in a very proactive way that we're human walking transmitters of disease.
Yes, and we have to be careful.
And that society might not exist much longer if we don't kind of think about the future and act in that same way. So seeing the self-destructive behaviors, seeing some people playing football, other people not playing football, other people having parties, but just is really, and then with the flu season coming up. So make a long story short, the human behavior issue has been something that's really been on I've been paid to kind of focus on and help to kind of market and message proactive behaviors. But just personally, it's always been a fascination. I major in political science and then religion and now marketing. So don't even ask how those things combine. But
they do.
But just Your thoughts on this human element, or this Homo sapiens kind of experience at this point in time?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and you know, I made a reference to it on Facebook, and you said that's a nice idea to talk about, and it's that, you know, our personalities are, you know, we have flaws. The human personality is flawed, and when you get into this idea of what I think and who I am and how I can project myself is it. You're going down a path that's not healthy. Yes, we all have our personalities and we have to accept who we are and that sort of thing. But it's really the thing that has kept us from destroying ourselves thousands of years ago completely has been that we have ideas that are higher than who we are individually, that hold it together. You know, some of the ideas are really bad, like racism, and other ideas are really good, like, you know, you take care of your neighbor. And how those play out, you know, really affect our community mental health. It's sort of like, you know, put on a mask because you transmit disease through your mouth and through your nose, and it goes back and forth that way.
Yes.
Well, guess what? Bad attitudes happen that way too. You know, it's through your mouth and through your ears. You know, as from a psychological point of view, if you got someone out talking in the media, you know, publicly talking about hatred and picking sides and who's going to win and who's going to lose all the time, that's bad for mental health. You know, this is bad. I mean, this pandemic sort of is an allegory for me to, you know, to the mental health situation that we're in. In fact, a lot of places around, you know, our county, Ingham County, Michigan, the county board declared racism a public health issue.
That's right. The public health crisis. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And it is just as bad as a bad virus.
So let's hang on that point for a second, because again, the clients I've been working with, I would say in the last 4 to 7 weeks, at least 50 municipalities have passed racism as a public health crisis resolution in their city council offices, et cetera. About 7 states. So is it a fad, or what's caused that to have such a political, somewhat not a total political consensus nationwide, but they have a number? California, for example, is one, but at least 30 to 40 separate municipalities, 3 in this little kind of state of Connecticut, have passed these racism's a public health crisis resolution. Is that a fad, or do you think they're doing that just to cover their behinds? Whether there's any authentic intent in passing these?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to give you options. I'm just trying to.
Yes. We can hope that it's not just a fad that's going to go away. We hope that it's something that will get traction and that people will start thinking systemically, you know, about how racism really messes people's heads up and causes all kinds of health issues. It's not just a crisis; it's a chronic illness.
Chronic precondition.
Yeah. And that's the sort of thing that we really have to think about. And you know, for our young brothers and sisters and everything who are thinking about trying to get into college and where they're going to go, no matter what you do, that's something that you have to kind of have in the back of your mind, is that as you go into these situations, it's like, you know, you can't always know what you're going to drink when you get a glass of water, but you should be kind of aware of whether it's safe to drink or not. If you just keep drinking it. You may be able to drink it a few times and it won't do anything to you, but if you keep drinking it all the time, it's going to do something bad to you. And so that's the way I look at it, is that I can put up with so much racism, but if it's just pervasive, and I live pretty well. Like I said, I live on the street where the governor lives. I live on the street where the mayor of the town lives and with other rich folks in town. I'm not rich, but hey, I got lucky. I got a house on the same street. And but there are folks who just live not too far from me who, have bad landlords, whose, roof leaks and nobody fixes it, who will go out and the police want to pull them over all the time, and they're dealing with, it's like drinking that water all the time.
Well, and yeah.
I get to sip it every once in a while, but they're just drinking it. They're just pouring it down all the time.
Well, and just as when you mentioned the water analogy, my mind goes to Flint.
Flint, yeah, we think about water a lot here in Michigan.
Is a perfect example. As we kind of conclude, let's speak directly to some of the younger people at Choate, and even some of the more recent alums in the context of this diversity and inclusion staffing and movement and those words and the need in 2020 to even have to have a diversity and inclusion program, training. What does that say to you?
Things have not changed. They have gotten better in some ways. I mean, there's more representation. There's more people around who, you can say, oh, look, there's so many more people of color around who are here. But until the system changes, we can't give up the struggle, because the struggle is about changing the institutions of racism and the institutions that support prejudice and discrimination against people. And I mean, that's the thing that we're fighting against. And, there's you want to get into my philosophy about it. As long as rich people can say, I don't have to suffer from what you're suffering from. If some people who, because of the color of their skin, can say, it's like critical race theory. If my skin's this color, I'm renting time. If my skin is white, then I own time.
I do want to dig a little further in terms of your philosophy, in terms of Wallingford. So are you saying just not that you haven't taught there, I haven't taught there, you've been back more than I have, but nonetheless,
a few times, yeah.
So how does that what you've just said is on a macro philosophical standpoint relate to curriculum or teaching or student interaction? Certainly Wallingford is not immune from those sentiments that you've just expressed. So how does it manifest in your mind in terms of student life?
Well, learn what you can. What I learned, Paul Carty and I have this thing, you probably chatted with him about it. We say blue blazers. That's like the code word for like, we know how to dress. We know how to put on a blue blazer and gray pants and a tie and walk into some place and know that this is the way we're supposed to dress. When you put on a suit and that sort of thing, you learn things at Choate that are valuable about how society, the trappings of leadership, of who's, like I tell people, they say, oh, you went to an elite school and and I go like, I was taught to think like the people in charge. And so I carry that in my head all the time. I know how they think. There are so many Black folks and Latino folks who don't know how the people in charge think. So take advantage of that education that you get, because then, empathy is everything. I'm trained in counseling.
Indeed.
Empathy is everything. And if you can put yourself into their shoes and know how they're thinking, then you can figure out how to change society incrementally or in bold ways.
So from an anchor, and just as we kind of wind down, I do want to give your daughter Anna a shout out and urge people to kind of follow her. So
Yeah.
the diversity and inclusion movement in this, I guess Keith Henderly was recently there, and there's a new person in that role. That's an incremental step, but a necessary incremental step.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I you know, I'm always in favor of someone who comes and tries to create the change. You know, awareness is necessary. There's always, you have to keep doing awareness over and over again. It's always awareness, 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 awareness. And then you have to get people to think in terms of, how can I adopt things that demonstrate my awareness, you know, that show that I'm really aware and I know what's going on. And that gets you to the point where making a commitment and trying to institutionalize change. And, you know, I've taught that I taught that in how people can go from paper to electronics. It's the same principle.
Indeed.
It's like getting people to go through those steps of change, to commit. And so it's always necessary. And I think it's going to be necessary. And, you know, they may be looking at their kids having, you know, if their kids go to choke like mine did, you know, there's going to be a diversity and inclusion person there until we get this thing right.
Let's give a shout out to Anna. Share with us kind of things she's up to. She's your oldest daughter?
She's my only daughter. She's my middle child. My oldest son is a director at ESPN up the road from you.
Up in Bristol?
Yeah, in Bristol. He lives in Meriden, and he's got a couple kids there, and he's living the good life in Connecticut.
I have to send him a Facebook request. But tell us about Anna, and she has an upcoming event.
So Anna's at Cornell University. I don't think it's out of school to say that she's about to go to leave next year and go to Notre Dame.
She's accepted a position.
She will be tenured faculty at Notre Dame University starting next year.
Cut it out.
Yep. She her expertise is on the effects of mass incarceration on Black fathers, basically, and their families, and the educational attainment of their children. For example, one of the things that she says is that, you know, kids who are going into kindergarten who have incarcerated fathers don't do well socially in school.
Yes.
Kids who are about to graduate from high school who have incarcerated fathers don't get into college and don't succeed in college. They fall apart in the first year. And there's statistics that prove that. So this is her body of research. And she's been on some programs and has been highlighted at a lot of conferences. And I think that she's starting to become a nationally known expert on the subject, which I'm really proud of.
Excellent. I can see that father smile. I can see that father glint in your eye. Can you see her when you came out of the hospital? Can you see her when you first saw? Can you see her now in your mind when you first saw her in the hospital?
Oh yeah. Well, that's a whole nother story. My kids were all born at home.
Cut it out.
Yeah, and so her little head came into my hands. You know.
You had not a doula, but I mean, was that a kind of a conscious choice to have?
Yes.
I mean, that's really, really advanced. That's to be doing that then. Cut it out.
But yeah, she's my girl. She's the one who decided to go into social change, and she's a sociologist, so she tries to be a scientist about it, but it's really about opening up people's eyes and saying, look, you know, we need to stop locking up people, you know, because it's ruining families. And when you ruin families, you ruin our whole society.
Right. More than any other nation. So.
Yes. So I'm proud of her in that she chose that field and that subject, and is getting some notoriety for it because she's doing the research. She did the quantitative research, and now she's about to embark in some qualitative research.
Tremendous. And I'll post. She has upcoming. She's currently at Cornell. She has an upcoming webinar that she's involved with. Again, as we conclude for the students, the Choate students and recent alums, you've slipped in, and I guess want to emphasize when a person, our immediate audience already knows this, but when you mention that word tenure, that's no small achievement. That's a lifetime achievement. And so,
indeed,
is there any backstory that you may not be able to tell about why Cornell did not? I've talked to a lot of Black professionals and academics that have moved to get tenure. They've had to move to another institution. Let me just say that in some simplistic terms. That some institutions erect more barriers, and others are opportunities kind of just sometimes are not where you expect them to be, but they do happen. Does she have any not that you have to elaborate on her backstory, but does she have any, would she have desired to receive tenure at Cornell?
She wanted to, but there's lots of things, and the one sort of advice that I would give to kids who are going to go into academia and they marry someone in the same field, and the university has to carry both of you at the same time.
Don't do it.
It's tough. It's tough because that's part of her. That's part of her story that I'll share. Is that her spouse is also a sociologist and he's also at Cornell, and they went there together. And Cornell was good enough to bring them there together, but I don't think Cornell wanted to support giving them both tenure together. So they went off to Notre Dame, where I think Notre Dame is going to be willing to do it.
See and again, the political, the personal, the context, as you say, is so important. Byron,
they're both people of color in a sociology department, that really doesn't understand what they need to do with folks of color. So
now you're opening up another 30-minute conversation. So you got to watch that. Any last questions for me, because I don't want to kind of harass you too much. I appreciate we spent a good time already. Any last questions or concerns that you want me to elaborate or respond
No,
to?
I'm just happy that you decided to put together something with some of the old folks from the old days at Choate. You were back there. You were one of the early folks who opened up the door for even us to come in, because you.
You're on pause.
Okay, you're back now.
All right, good. So you're mentioning opening up the doors, and then you froze.
Yeah, you're one of the folks we talked about when I was a student at Choate. We talked about Tom Ficklin and some other folks, and we were getting that information from people like Dennis Orton, who I think was coming in new when you were there. And I think there needs to be this continuity, and so I'm happy that you're doing this.
Great.
That's to say all that is to happy that you're doing this, because the continuity is really part of making sure that we do these steps, because all change occurs in increments. Nothing, a lot of folks that I'm dealing with, a lot of my friends are Bernie friends, are Bernie supporters, and it's like, we want this now, and we got to have it like tomorrow, and we wake up the next day and it hasn't changed yet, and we're depressed. And I'm going like, you need to understand that things happen in increments.
That's a good point.
And we all pass it on on a little, and it can get better if we pass it on with some power.
Excellent, excellent.
So that's what I'll end it with.
All right, excellent, excellent, excellent. And I'll try to keep smiling. You know, I'm thinking I'll reach out to Paul and maybe have at least listen in when we chat, because I might need him to be need you to be a truth teller, because lawyers can sometimes stretch stories. So I might need someone in the background to be a fact checker. I mean, as he gives his narration, I might need a fact checker, and I won't ask about too many of the parties at Wesleyan. We'll keep that off the record.
Well, you know, and Paul came from Brooklyn, and you know, and I came from Detroit, and Bradley came from Chicago, and we all came from different places, and so we all have our different perspective.
Indeed.
You know, about you know, what part of the streets we came from. You know, and you know, I came from part of the streets in Detroit that skilled trades, working class people worked in the car industry. You know, we had houses, you know, and cars and stuff. Other people came from other parts of the street, you know, and so, but you know, but I'm the first person that ever got a college degree in my family.
Isn't that something?
Because the way you got money otherwise is you go out and you get a skill, and you go and you exercise that skill. You can fix cars.
Indeed.
You know, you can build houses, you can paint, you know, you can, that sort of thing.
Well, Byron, we got to go.
Yeah, I know. I'm just talking.
You're allowed. You're allowed. You're allowed. Again, we want to keep mobile. That's the key. That's a good motif as we kind of conclude. You know, to stay mobile and stay on the highway, and don't run in the dead ends. And you have a breakdown in your car, kind of fix it and get back up and keep on moving. So
but we gotta keep talking, man.
We'll make it happen. I'll reach out to Paul. Have you kind of be my fact checker. You know, see what's good for him. I'm thinking like twice a month, and we'll keep it moving from there. Say hello to the the grandchildren, etc. And I didn't hear too much noise. So do you think they've come in yet?
Oh, I've heard the bumping upstairs, but that's
upstairs. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Keep hope alive. We'll talk. We'll talk before the election.
Yeah.
Byron Haskins, thank you so much, man.
All right, Tom.
Been a
Good
pleasure
talking with you.